"Would you all like to come to a party at my place later on?" I asked, as I passed round a brown paper bag filled with cookies and poured them large vodkas on the rocks. "I think we're already at one," replied Eric. "George said he'd try and drop by, and I know Harry and Richard are going to be there." "All right, see you later," said Eric. "It's okay if we bring Keith and Ron, isn't it?" "Sure, okay, see you later. I'm just going to nip off down through Boys Town on the way back. I want to pick up some Zoom." "I bet that's not all," twinkled Eric. It was dark as I and a few guests I'd found en route at a party in the Polo Lounge arrived back at 203 Bristol Avenue North. A young Texan, an Irish choir boy, and a Thai busboy called Bum were not among them. Van Dyke Parks greeted me with, "We all love your style, Graham, and to me that's as important as ducks in June." I agreed wholeheartedly and went into the main room. It must have been something I'd eaten. The house seemed to be full of an assemblage of images, sounds and smells and other sensations, mediated through a spot 2 inches behind the nape of my neck and all the way up the inside of my trousers. I stared at people, hoping that they wouldn't notice how strange they looked to me. Normally this didn't bother me. I'd probably been smoking too much. Harry Nilsson was at the piano performing a duet with a barking robot dog. Ringo then led a rendition of Happy Birthday to You, accompanied by 25 lead vocalists who just happened to be there, and countless session singers, a gift from Warner Brothers. Harry and Marty Feldman added a touch of Keith Moon by using the top of the piano as a drum kit. My mother and father hovered in a state of enlightened astonishment at having found yet another black man who was very well spoken, you know. Taking a cue from Marty, who was by now chasing Hollywood psychiatrist Stuart Lerner around the room trying to embarrass him with a French kiss, I chatted up the nearest sex symbol, Sylvia Christel, telling her to pop in and see Bernard McKenna, who I felt needed a sexual threat to slow down his rapidly developing affair with a gallon of bourbon. She returned a few minutes later, her advances having been repelled by an in-flight ashtray. She wandered off into the garden to be consoled by a girlfriend. Tony Stratton Smith, 1st Earl of Lambourne elect, schoonered past beatifically, murmuring mantrilically, "Ah, Brazil, ah, Brazil, ah, Brazil." George Harrison, an island of purity, glowed nearby with a "Hello, Graham" and a self-realization fellowship wave. My mother didn't think that Ron Woods and Keith Richards should have been allowed into my bedroom, since they were Eric's guests, and she was very worried about whether those 2 girls were all right out there in the bushes. I let her worry away happily. Loretta Feldman told a bemused Eric how full of shit people could be in an explanatory bellow. Elton John appeared without his cap and spectacles, a bubbling, liberated, portly soul. Image followed image until early morning. The house was almost empty, but the drumming at the piano had resumed and continued till near dawn when Marty and Loretta left, leaving Harry, who couldn't understand people's lack of stamina, and called me a shit as I saw him firmly into his limo. "Yes, I am," seemed the appropriate reply. Out there at 6:30 a.m. he screamed at the top of his voice in the direction of Hollywood, exclaiming that it too was full of shit. I bellowed in agreement with my friend as his limo thuffed off down the drive towards the rising sun. Dr. One Across gave me a conspiratorial thumbs up from the bushes. Thankfully, I closed the door, and Star-to-Bed, tuckers into the stars, no kids or animals, saw me to bed, not forgetting to clean my teeth. I fell asleep as a girl with brown knees finished Chapter 9 of Biggles Grits His Thighs. "The moon," yawned Algy opiningly, "is rather a dull place," and all of us decided that we would definitely leave the following Tuesday. Even at 1/6G, the pogo sticks had become a bore. The daily round of long-distance TV chat shows, panel games about extraterrestrial things, guest appearances on This Is Your Planet, all of which conveniently defy description, became about as interesting as breakfast at Tiffany's. It was Sunday afternoon, and the pubs were all shut. After an hour of sexual reminiscences about things none of us had ever done, we decided to have a farewell party. David made the cucumber sandwiches, John prepared James Grimsdyke's famous punch, and I slipped out in my beige spacesuit to see if the others would be prepared to pop along. The Beast and Anna Karenina were doing the hoovering. John Cleese's diary was absolutely chock-a-block, and Nostradamus had left a note on the door of his capsule saying, "I predict I'll be back about 8. I was about to give up, but thought, without much hope, I may as well call in on the Alleys. Mrs. Alley was regurgitating masticated carrots into the champ's mouth as he was being rubbed down by his old space partner. "Can you come to our party?" I asked. "Man, I'd love to," he said, "but no, I can't." "Sorry about that," I said. "But why not?" Look, I've spent 12 years building up this reputation of being a loud-mouthed butt nigger. Do you want me to spoil that by coming round to your place and being as intelligent as I really am? Yes, I suppose that would blow your cover a bit, old man, I said. You bet, man. I stepped out nimbly through the airlock and deftly percolated past Elton John's piano-shaped moon buggy. He was obviously entertaining David Bowie and Ken Liberace, so I passed on. I knew the next space vehicle was occupied for an at-home evening by David Hockney and Alan Bennett, comparing the size of their accents, so I didn't bother with them. I then molested my way past J.B. Priestley, H.R.H. the Queen Mother, David Niven, please note, Peter Sellers, Britt Eklund, Carlo Ponti, Peter Cook, and Bo Dudley, but not the Dr. Jonathan Miller, H.R.H. the very dead Governor of New Zealand, Noel Coward, George Melly, and Larry and Jerry Durrell. Unfortunately, they all had slight chills that evening. Keith Moon, Richard Starkey and Harry Nilsson were genuinely disappointed that they couldn't come, in that they weren't in the lunar regions at that time, but wished us all well. In desperation, I knocked on the hatch of a capsule made entirely of wood. There was no reply. I undid the mahogany latch on the huge teak door and approached the coffin. Engraved in the oak were the words, "Here lies Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wilde, gone out for good." I'd had enough excuses for one day. I wrenched open the Lombardy poplar lid with a noise resembling a loud rustle, which means nothing on earth, but in outer space can often split your nose. I took hold of the dead wit's legs and dragged him back to my place. There is a time in the affairs of grebes which, taken at the cludge, leads on to brutalness. A man is not a wasp, nor Dusseldorf built in a day. Damon Runyon had a bunion, and for awe they say, hey I. My heart bakes, a drowsy numbness fills my Jensen. Let it be, let it be. What's that supposed to mean? Asked David. It's not bad. He is dead, I said. Oh, come on. He's dead. It's not bad. No, come on, Wilde. What does that mean? Asked the Prince of Wales. It means, Your Majesty, it means... The audience exploded into laughter. We all ran off stage, and John Cleese hissed angrily into my ear, "Learn your fucking lines. It should have been... You had us waiting for hours." Graham, faintly. "I didn't think anyone noticed." John, even more faintly. "No, I suppose they didn't." Graham, and still more faintly. The end.